All right, you've heard of subs, heroes, hoagies, and grinders. Now, when you get to the Big Easy, you've probably found a muffalata. So you realize our iconic sandwiches are a bit different. Stick around, I'll introduce her in a second, and we'll get to the history and the heart of the New Orleans po' boy. All right, everybody, I am happy to have with me writer, actress, photographer, author, and all-around good person, Alexandra Kennon. Kennon?
Yeah, you got it. Nailed it.
All right, she's here in the studio with me. We've been trying to do this on and off for a while. COVID has been a slight deviator in that for a bit. So we definitely want to, said author. This is Classic Restaurants in New Orleans.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for having me, BJ.
The book dives into 13 of the oldest restaurants in New Orleans that are still in business. So well-versed in the history of food in the city. Little secret, you know, I do tours. We've talked about that. This is the poor person. So if I do a bad tour, it's her fault. She's the one who trained me to do food tours. So we're going to blame it completely on her. But, you know, you get into a lot of information, stuff that we don't always get to share. You know, we probably spend 3 or 4 minutes talking about the history of the po' boy, and you don't really get to get into it. And I thought this would be a great spot for us to talk with everybody. So welcome, and we'll jump right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. There's definitely a lot to cover there.
We could definitely get, and that's why I said, Muffalata going to have to be a separate episode. You could go down an alley on that with no problem whatsoever.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, everywhere's got their regional sandwiches, but we got a few of them here in New Orleans. Lots to cover.
We couldn't settle with just one. All right, so before we get into the history, here's the questions our viewers from other parts of the country will want to know. What's the difference? So what makes a po' boy so different from all those other sandwiches we mentioned?
Really what it comes down to, like a lot of these regional sandwiches, is the bread. You know, I mean, as we said, you've got your Italian beef up in Chicago, you've got your Philly cheesesteaks over in Philly. Everywhere's got their sandwich, but really it's that French bread the po' boy is on that kind of makes it that iconic New Orleans po' boy. And as you well know, kind of our go-to po' boy bread down here in New Orleans, and this is kind of how the locals can differentiate what's a legitimate po' boy from a poser, is that Leidenheimer French bread. Partially because the humidity of our air helps it have this really fluffiness in the middle, and then this crispy kind of crumbly outer layer that holds all that gravy together while still soaking up all that good stuff. So it really comes down to that French bread.
I think that is definitely true. And we also talk about, I mean, I always mention our water is unique down here too. We have such heavy water, not the nuclear reactor kind of heavy, the other kind of heavy water. We've got a lot of minerals and stuff. Well, we get everything from 32 states and 2 Canadian provinces flow down the river and visit us here. So that makes the water a little special, and I think that adds to what's happening with that bread.
Yeah, adds to the flavor a little bit.
So does Bourbon Street, but I don't know if we want to go there either.
Ooh, let's not.
We interrupt this video to ask if you're enjoying our content. Please remember to subscribe. It's a big deal for us. Don't forget to hit the like button and the bell if you're into that sort of thing. If you'd like to give us a little lagniappe, helping us make bigger and better videos, you can go to our Patreon page to become a patron at one of 5 different levels. As always, you can find our vids all about us, as well as our merch store on our website, www.bigeasylife.org. Okay, back to the video.
All right, so let's get into where did this history / mythology of the po' boy come from, and how did it evolve?
Absolutely, BJ. And as we were just kind of discussing, a lot of New Orleans history's a little bit nebulous. You know, we kind of put the emphasis on the story aspect of history in New Orleans. So a lot of these things, you know, you've got a lot of different accounts, a lot of competing information. But the most solid one with the best evidence that I've come by, and kind of what's generally the most commonly accepted story for how the po' boy came to be, started all the way back in the 1920s, right, with Benny and Clovis Martin. You gotta love the name named Clovis.
Who names their child Clovis?
I know. It must have been a 1920s thing. If you're currently still alive today named Clovis, I am so sorry. But anyway, these two guys, Benny and Clovis, they are from Raceland, Louisiana. Tiny little town, and as so many of us from rural Louisiana do, they wanted to move to the big city of New Orleans. So Benny and Clovis made their way here to New Orleans, and they got a job working as streetcar conductors. Now, you probably know this, but a lot of even New Orleans locals don't realize that that St. Charles Avenue streetcar line is the longest continually operating streetcar line in the whole world. That thing's been around since 1835. Now, of course, it hasn't always been operated by electricity. It was steam powered for a long time. I'm sure it was a lot louder back when that was the case,
Wow.
but it has been continually running all the way since 1835. It's a National Historic Landmark, and it is still getting our drunk asses home from the French Quarter and Bourbon Street or wherever the locals actually go to drink that's not bourbon. Anyway, still going strong today. Now, Benny and Clovis, when they first moved to New Orleans, they worked as conductors on that streetcar line. Now, eventually, at the end of the 1920s, they left their positions as streetcar conductors to open up the Martin Brothers Coffee Stand and Restaurant. This was a little French Quarter coffee shop and restaurant right at the corners of Ursuline Avenue and St. Peter's Street. So they open up their new little coffee shop and restaurant, and right after they open, their former union brothers, this was Streetcar Conductors Union Division 194, went on strike for better wages. Now, at this point, we're in 1929. It is the height of the Great Depression. It was a rough time for everybody, but particularly for these streetcar conductors. You know, they really weren't being treated right, and so they were demanding better pay. And not only were they striking, they were actually flipping streetcars over at
I
points.
saw pictures of the... I don't want to mess with guys who flip streetcars.
No.
Just, you know.
It was pretty metal, all things considered,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, those streetcars are heavy. Anyway, so they're striking, they're flipping streetcars, they're having to bring in prison labor to operate the cars in lieu of the striking workers.
Yeah,
and
that makes me feel better.
Yeah, exactly, right. It's really a whole mess. But Benny and Clovis, having been members of the Streetcar Conductors Union 194, they decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to help out our brothers while they're striking, and we're going to offer them a free meal when they come into our shop. Now, they actually ran a little letter in the local paper. This was the Times-Picayune, been going strong for quite a long time. Got to find it here. It's a pretty long book. I always go over my word count. They ran a letter in the local paper, basically offering this free meal to their fellow streetcar conductors in that union. And BJ's got a much better Yat accent than I do. I bet he sounds a lot more like Benny and Clovis Martin would have sounded than I would. So I'm going to let him read that for me, this letter they ran in the Times-Picayune back in 1929.
She just wanted to make me put my glasses on camera. So.
You caught me.
Dear friends, we are with you heart and soul, and at times you are around the French Market. Don't forget to drop in at Martin's Coffee Stand and Restaurant Corner, Ursuline and North Peter Street. Our meal is free to any members of Division 194. We have 39 employees, all riding jitneys to help win the strike. We are with you until hell freezes. H-L, I'll put that in there. And when it does, we will furnish blankets to keep you warm. I like these guys. So,
right.
With best wishes to your cars, we are your friends and former members of Division 194, Clovis F. and Benny Martin.
Thank you, BJ. Very, very nicely done. So as you can tell from that letter, there's a little bit of drama there, you know, till hell freezes over. They're really standing by their brothers here and offering them that free meal. So, story has it that when one of these members of that Streetcar Conductors Union would come in to the Martin Brothers Coffee Stand and Restaurant, one of the guys in the front of house would call back to the kitchen, "Hey, we got another poor boy coming." And that is the origin of our poor boy sandwich. Now, as you know, as the name of your show is, we like things to be a little easy in New Orleans, so poor boy was a little bit too much to say. We eventually dropped that R. Now it's just the po' boy because it rolls off the tongue a little bit easier.
There's no word that we can't shorten.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we can make it a little easier to say, we certainly will. But in the earliest days, back when Benny and Clovis were first slinging those po' boys to those striking streetcar conductors, they were probably most often basically a fried potato and roast beef gravy po' boy to kind of cut the cost of the beef. You know, a lot of us associate either a ham po' boy or a roast beef po' boy as the original, but really it would have been that kind of roast beef gravy and potato. And that's why you'll still find so many po' boy joints today that are offering that French fry and gravy po' boy as a little kind of tip of the hat back to Benny and Clovis.
I haven't missed. Those are amazing.
Oh, right. I know that'll knock a hangover out like that. It's a total carb bomb, but they're pretty delicious.
Yes,
yeah.
no doubt.
But anyway, of course, the po' boy has expanded since then. Now, pretty much any sandwich that's served on that French bread dressed can qualify as a po' boy. Back in Benny and Clovis's day, we wouldn't have even qualified the fried shrimp or the fried oyster sandwiches as po' boys.
No, we'd have called them something else for sure.
Exactly. We would have called those probably shrimp loaves or oyster loaves back then. But shortly after Benny and Clovis started slinging these po' boys to the striking streetcar conductors, there was a guy over in Mid-City at Parkway Bakery that had opened in 1911. Now, this was the second owner of Parkway, Henry Timothy, who basically in solidarity with the Martin brothers said, you know what, I'm going to offer these free sandwiches to these striking streetcar conductors too. So Parkway Po' Boys picked it up. They were one of the first places that's still open today that started giving away these free sandwiches, and they just continued on with it. Shortly thereafter, they realized, hey, the American Can Company, that big old factory building that's apartments these days, y'all might have seen on the horizon right over there by Bayou St. John and Parkway, they started selling po' boys to those workers of the American Can Company for only 10 cents a pop. And because the American Can Company was open 24 hours, Parkway started being open 24 hours as well. Smart move.
And that, as they say, is history.
That's history.
Well, you know, I know the first time the name was used in print was November 4th, 1929. It was printed in the Times-Picayune as well, and it said, presently, the tree-shaped courthouse lawn was dotted with groups gnawing at the huge sandwiches New Orleans knows as the po' boy. See, I actually did a little research before we actually did this.
I can tell, yeah.
So, and I guess my thought with this is, you know, these whole loaf of sandwiches that are split and filled is what the letter said. In their case, they talked about ham, sausage, or cheese. Do you think this helps support the kind of the legend of the Martin brothers? Since the streetcar strike started in August, just a few months before this was in the paper, you think this supports it, or is this kind of, do we really think their tale is more apocryphal? What's your take on this?
So, admittedly, I think it could kind of go either way. You know, I think it could kind of go either way to a degree. There are, admittedly, other people who reported having po' boy sandwiches even prior to that running in the paper. In fact, a famous jazz clarinet player, Sidney Bechet, talked in his autobiography about eating roast beef po' boys with Louis Armstrong all the way back in the 1910s. So I think it could be a little bit apocryphal, a little bit of one of those New Orleans legends, because as you read in that letter that Benny and Clovis published, they didn't specifically reference a po' boy. They didn't even reference a sandwich. They just said our meal. So that leaves things a little bit open to interpretation there. But of course, it could go either way. You know, I mean, Sidney Bechet could have been thinking of a different sandwich. He could have kind of been like retroactively projecting that was a po' boy he was eating with Louis Armstrong.
Because am I correct that we're talking about his memoirs that were written much later?
Yes.
In his life, and he was looking back, so
absolutely.
Again, another gray area where you never know where the truth is. And let's face it, I mean, go to Philly and you've got competing people for who says they made the Philly cheese sandwich. Right here in New Orleans for many, many years, there was a total battle about who was the first to make the muffalata. So I think that goes with anything and anywhere you go, that there's going to be this kind of, I was there first and I do it best.
Oh, of course, you're going to have that competitive nature. You know, everybody wants to be able to say they have the original po' boy, the original muffaletta, whatever that sandwich is, because that way they got the claim to fame, you know, and that's where people want to go when they come to experience that sandwich. So it's a little bit up in the air, but I do have to give Parkway Po' Boys credit as being one of the earliest ones that definitively was serving those sandwiches to these striking streetcar conductors.
Definitely. Well, I know we could sit here and talk about history all day long, but I can hear some of my viewers out there, their stomachs are grumbling as they're watching this. So, we met at Mahoney's for the first time. They got an excellent roast beef po' boy. They're a pretty fabulous place.
It's great.
Any other great locations that you would recommend to those people that may be visiting New Orleans, or locals that might have just missed a bus and had someplace that they hadn't got one before?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I already mentioned Parkway. Of course, Mahoney's, as you know, is one of my favorites. I particularly love their shrimp remoulade po' boy with the fried green tomatoes and the remoulade sauce.
yes.
It's a good one. But as I said, Parkway is another one of my very favorites. You know, I love their surf and turf they do. You kind of get the best of both worlds with that one, the roast beef as well as the fried shrimp. But I also have to give a shout out to Domalice's over Uptown. That place has been in the same family for 4 generations now. They used to feed the Manning brothers back in the day, you know, so if you can fuel Super Bowl champions, you're probably doing something right. And, you know, it's just one of those kind of iconic New Orleans institutions. And there's a lot of places like that.
And I think you can go with, it really depends on what little twist of taste you like. I mean, perfect example in my thought is you go into the Irish Channel. You have Tracy's does a great job with sandwiches, kind of a little Irish twist to it, not much, you know. But with that, you go to some place like Di Martino's or Rocky and Carlo's, which has kind of more of an Italian twist to that po' boy. It's still a po' boy. They're using pretty much the same bread, but what they're using may vary a little. Like Di Martino's uses a seeded bun, which is almost bizarre in the sense that a local would see a seeded bun for a po' boy, but that's what they do, kind of going into that Italian flair with it.
Absolutely, and I do have to give a shout out. Bevy Seafood also uses the seeded buns.
Do they?
Which admittedly, when I first saw that, I'm a little bit of a purist, so I was a little bit put off. You know, like I don't even know if this is a legitimate po' boy, but they do some really good stuff with those seeded buns over there. I got to give them credit.
Where do you think should be the best place? Put in the comments below and let us know where we're missing out. Where did we not mention that has the best po' boys around? Let's face it, there's probably 1,000 corner stores, that grocery stores and gas stations that serve probably some of the best food in the city. So let us know and we'll highlight them here. So here's the big question. I'm not going to ask what your favorite place to eat one is. I want to know what's your favorite type of po' boy. What's your favorite po' boy sandwich?
Oh man.
Better yet, I'll be nice. I'll be kind. I'll give you a top 3.
Okay.
In no particular order.
That's generous.
If I just told you one, somebody would say, "Oh no." So.
Right. Okay. Because it's a little hard to choose, admittedly. And without specifying place, because as you said, there's a lot of good spots to get one of these sandwiches, I'm going to go number 1 slot is going to be that surf and turf, right? You get the best of both worlds. You get the roast beef with the gravy, nice and sloppy. You get the fried shrimp as well, really decadent.
And don't be put off. That is an amazing combination. Some people would be like, fried shrimp and roast beef? You don't know what you're missing.
Oh, yeah. You know, you got to try it if you haven't had one before. So following that one up, I'm going to go with a Peacemaker. Now, there's a lot of varieties of Peacemaker you can get in this city. You can tell that I'm pretty decadent here. But my go-to favorite kind of Peacemaker is when you got the fried oysters and the fried shrimp on one sandwich, you know? Once again, best of both worlds. There are certain joints where you got to go a particular day of the week to get those fried oysters, but it's worth it. Oh, what a cutie.
If you couldn't hear, that was the small dog barking at the foot of the stairs. We're not going to edit that out.
He's a cute dog. And then,
what's our third? Your third favorite type of po' boy sandwich?
Yeah, and now this is the part where it starts to get a little bit tricky because there's so many amazing options out there. But I'm going to have to say a classic catfish po' boy. You know,
Ooh,
sometimes
that's a good call.
Right. You know, sometimes simple is best. I mean, you mentioned that there's a lot of great gas stations in New Orleans and all over Louisiana that have really excellent po' boys. I grew up going to the little gas station in my hometown. They go by Feliciana Seafood, and they do a damn good fried catfish po' boy. So that's something that's just kind of nostalgic for me, you know, that I associate with growing up. But really, you can't go wrong. Any sandwich fully dressed on that good French bread, I'm probably going to enjoy.
And I think that's a good point, too, because a lot of us grew up a French fried po' boy sandwich from Rocky and Carlo's I was getting since I was about that tall. Yeah. So it's one of those things you just go back to. You know, it's as much not only just the taste, but the memories that it sparks off when you have it. So definitely a piece there. So what's your favorite? We want to know where you want to eat them. Now tell us your favorite, because my top 25 I could list. It could be a show all its own, because that's the hardest thing. The hardest thing is not eating it. It's when you get down and you go, oh my God, what do I want? Look at all the choices I have.
Too many options.
I like a Ferdy. I like roast beef and ham.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Great option, but so many different ones. Well, I hope we've given you a bit of history and an appetite for great food. I know my stomach's rumbling. What about yours?
I'm so hungry right now.
I hope y'all got the Uber app out. You're looking for the best po' boy to get delivered to the house. So go check out Alex's book. There's going to be a link below in the description. Alex, take a minute and tell them where they can find you and your book and all things Alex.
Oh, thank you for that, BJ. Appreciate it. So I've got a website. You can go to alexandrakennon.com. That's just my name, spelled pretty much like it sounds. There you can get a link to buy a book from me personally. I'll even sign it for you or for a friend. If you got a foodie or a history buff in your life as a Christmas gift, I would be more than happy to do that. Also, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, pretty much any place that you find books. You can find a copy of this. And actually, we just recently got hardbacks out. So if you go on Amazon,
awesome.
yeah, you can get a hold of a hardback of it. I still like the paperback, you know, just because...
Go anywhere.
Right, exactly. Take it anywhere with you, nice and lightweight. But if you want a hardback to give as a gift, we got those now too. But yeah, really appreciate you having me and appreciate the publicity.
Thank you all very much. Please take time to check out a link in the description below for Alex Books. I'll leave the link for both Amazon and her website, so it's easy to find that way. We're going to run out and get a po' boy, so don't forget to visit the website at www.bigeasylife.org and see our daily history moment on our social media platforms. And as always, thanks for being part of our Big Easy Life.